today on substance use disorders. And just to let you know, I just saw that flash up, but we are being recorded. It's always good to let people know that. On behalf of Rappahannock Community Services, as well as the Mental Health Association of Fauquier County, I want to welcome you here today to this substance use disorders presentation. I am Alan Rasmussen. I'm the prevention manager for Rappahannock Community Services. I've been in that position working for that agency for the past 18 and a half years with a focus on suicide and substance abuse prevention. And as we unfold welcoming here, I would like to go ahead and have, since I did a slight introduction on myself, I'd like Renee and Christy Piet to introduce themselves just briefly, and then I'll continue with what we're going to do today and help facilitate the presentation. I do want to say this is definitely a team presentation. RRCS and the Mental Health Association are in partnership. We have been for a long time, but we're doing this series of trainings. This is one of the trainings. We have another one coming up May 11, and we've actually done this past year, we've done a whole series of trainings, and we continue. I think we're looking to continue to do this into the future because it's a great way to outreach to the community and provide needed information to community members and community partners. So anyway, Renee, you want to say a couple of things about yourself, and then Christy, and then we'll move along.
Thank you, Alan, so much. Yes, I'm Renee Norden. I'm the Executive Director of the Mental Health Association. I have been here for a little over 16 months now. Before that, I spent over 20 years working in high schools with adolescents as a guidance director and school counselor. I also have a background in emergency mental health and working with suicide prevention with Alan, actually.
Yep.
We are so excited to have Christy from SpiritWorks join us. Christy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me for this. This is very important community outreach that we're doing with each other. I'm Christy Piet, and I work for SpiritWorks Foundation in Warrenton. My mothership is in Williamsburg, and we act as one. Jan Brown is the CEO and founder of SpiritWorks, just a wonderful person and advocate for all things recovery and mental health. And I just look up to her so much. I'm 9.5 years in recovery this time. It's a journey, it's a process. And I'm a certified peer recovery specialist. And I keep doing trainings constantly, and I use the Mental Health America Association Fauquier's webinar sites all the time. They're free, they're wonderful. I'm trained in mental health first aid as well. And it's just very important for us to get out there, erase the stigma, and let everybody in on how to cope or walk through, navigate the journey of recovery.
Christy, we're excited to have you here today, and with that lived experience, it's vital to hear from you, and so glad you could be part of this team today. And so I'm going to move into the presentation, and so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a presentation with some information about substance use.
My meeting now, so it'll probably be an hour. I'm not sure how long I'm going to listen.
Yeah, let me see. I'm going to mute.
So I got everything loaded there. Okay.
I'm going to encourage everybody to mute their microphones because we're hearing some information. Robert, not to pinpoint anybody, but everybody, if you can mute your microphone so that we don't get any background noise. I can see if I can try to do that myself, but if you, Megan, Chris, not Chrissy, but yeah, okay. I'm going to move along, so appreciate that. So what we're doing today, we're going to provide some information about substance use disorders to lay a foundation, and then ultimately after the presentation, we'll open this up for some discussion And we like that part of it. So we want to lay that information, and then we'll have a discussion, open it up for everybody to talk and ask questions. We can share further information and go from there. So, the slide here that you're seeing about what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about what is called some sobering statistics related to substance use disorders. We'll talk a little bit about substances that are used. So you want to lay this some prevalence information. You want to talk about what substances are maybe commonly used. We'll talk about signs and symptoms. We'll talk about risk factors. We'll talk about harmful effects, and then how to help and get help. And so let's let me slide this forward here. Some statistics. And, I find it's always good to lay out some prevalence information if you're going to do a talk, or what's the point of talking about it. But roughly 46 million Americans struggle with substance use concerns, and more than 40% do not seek treatment. And when you're looking at prevalence, there's a statistic about the number of Americans who, if they're struggling with substance use concerns, they may likely have a substance use disorder. And an important piece of that statement, always to me, is to address an issue, you want to have appropriate treatment that's readily available. And sometimes, people don't, with substance use disorders, they don't seek treatment for a variety of reasons. First, they don't see it being an issue, maybe, or if they want to get it, it's the help, sometimes it's not readily available. And so timing is critical. There's a lot of issues around that point, and it opens up a discussion in and of itself, which we can do later. But it's staggering information. An estimated 14.4 million Americans are battling alcohol use disorder, yet more than 92% have not received treatment in the past year. And, when we talk about commonly used drugs, we never want to lose sight of, and I'll talk about it a little more in the next slide, but when you look at alcohol, major issues, and the most commonly used drug is alcohol, and the most commonly abused. So a parent with a substance use disorder is 3 times more likely to physically or sexually abuse their child. There's some, offshoot behaviors and major community issues tied in with substance use disorders, and, ties into mental health, suicide, and other issues too. The result of this is that these children are more than 50% more likely to be arrested as juveniles, and 40% more likely to commit a violent crime. Overall, lost productivity as a result of substance use disorders cost employers $25.5 billion annually. The cost of addiction is amplified through worker distraction and productivity lost. So, this always opens up a big discussion, like I said, on the impact of substance use disorders, and it spreads out all through the community and is tied to many community issues that a lot of our local community partners work to address. So, this slide here I really like. And I got to tell you something I didn't mention in my introduction. I don't want to talk too much about myself, but for 28 years I was worked for the Virginia Department of Corrections and ultimately retired in 2003 as a chief probation parole officer, having run the offices in Charlottesville and Culpeper during my period of work there. But one of the major issues in corrections at that time was substance use and and abuse. So and a lot of times you'd have discussions with people, and I do it now with families. I do some work for National Counseling Group, but anytime you're working with families around this issue, a lot of times people are in denial. They don't want to talk about having a problem. We're not here to teach people to diagnose. Don't get me wrong. We're not teaching people to diagnose, but it's good information to know what are core components or ways to define or understand fully what a substance use disorder is. And to me, if we understand that, we can understand when somebody may likely need professional help versus this is appropriate, okay behavior. So I love definitions, and this is a key one. Same with mental health disorder. It applies the same way. So a substance use disorder, SUD, is a mental disorder that affects a person's brain and behavior, leading to a person's inability to control their use of substances such as legal or illegal drugs, alcohol, or medications. Symptoms can range from moderate to severe, with addiction being the most severe form of SUDs. Now, this addiction negatively impacts their relationships, their education, their employment, their life
Can't hear it.
responsibilities, and self-care.
Oh, I got it.
All right, I'm going to try to remind everybody to mute their microphone if you can. There we go. If you can mute that microphone, it helps. Thank you. And so, and look, this paragraph here is important because it's the same with mental health disorders. When whatever's going on impacts a person's relationships with others, you know, there's struggles there because of the use, their education or their work, you know, it's interfering with their ability to have satisfying relationships, do their educational work on their education if they're in school, or their employment if they have a job and it's interfering with their ability to work and do their, and then their life responsibilities, their daily activities, care for their children, care for other family members, care for themselves. You know, so when it interferes with that, those are major indicators that there's something going on that needs to be addressed professionally. So it impacts their ability to live, laugh, love, and learn. And so again, I don't want to beat this one down too much, but it's important to understand the dynamic of when a certain activity can become a problem activity. And those are some good defining points. So commonly used substances, and alcohol, most commonly used and abused. Tobacco, you know, I mean, with all the, I got to say this too, you know, I'm looking at all the medications and drugs that are out there, and you hear in the news like fentanyl and the opioid epidemic. We're all in the middle of that stuff, but and I'm not minimizing any of that at all. Prescription medications, everything. This list we need to look at, and you could almost lose sight of things like alcohol or tobacco with or marijuana, since it's being legalized, or vape products and things like that when you're dealing with the opioid epidemic. You've got, and if you track your news, I mean, you hear about fentanyl, but there's also a new drug out, ISO-D, and it's 50 times stronger than fentanyl. I mean, so it's like there seems to be a new drug evolving all the time. So anyway, commonly used substances: alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, leading cause of preventable death, disability, and disease in the United States, including vape products. There's nicotine in those vape products. Marijuana, including edibles and vape products. Prescription stimulants like Ritalin, and we've got down here prescription pain medications, but opioids, methamphetamines, and you know, we see caffeine is the most used substance. And so we need to be alert to that as well. I always like to, hey, I don't want to, I'm saying this, what makes some of these substances like alcohol, for example, when you look at communities and we're saying, look, alcohol, if you get down to it, it can be a deadly drug. I've lost family members myself to abuse of alcohol. They've died. I have a 53-year-old brother at the time that died from alcohol abuse. And I don't usually like to mention personal stuff, but that's my lived experience there. But when you look at communities, there's a lot of, you see breweries opening up, you see it gets to be a message like this is an okay thing, but we always need to be alert to when it gets overboard and it can lead to problem behaviors in someone's life. And Renee will talk to you all more about some of those harmful effects, but keep in mind, there's always maybe some new drugs evolving. So let's talk about some signs of, I like this list here, signs and symptoms for individuals. And so, I like the definition of signs and symptoms. Signs is what you can see. Symptoms are what somebody is experiencing. So it's, when I see, if I'm a gatekeeper and I see signs, I'm going to explore what I see so I can understand maybe if there's any symptoms or what's going on. Does someone need help? But these are signs and symptoms for individuals to think about. So the feeling that you must use the drug regularly, daily, or even several times a day, so to me, it's that when you look at substance use disorders or components of a substance use disorder, there can be an increase in use. Maybe you start out using a little bit and then you start to use more, having intense urges for the drug that block out any other thoughts. That's that where you're wanting dependence. I need it over time. So you're hearing increase in use, dependence, over time, needing more of the drug to get the same effect. That's developing tolerance. The more you use, you develop a tolerance for it. So you need a little more. And again, taking larger amounts of the drug over a longer period of time than you intended, so you lose, maybe you have in your mind, I'm going to use this much, or this is what the level of use I'm going to have, but it goes over that. And so it's, you lose control over your use. Making certain that you maintain a supply of the drug when it becomes a preoccupation. I've seen this where I've seen people say things like, hey, the weekend's coming, or there might be some snow. I better make sure I have enough supply so I don't run out during this time, or I want to make sure I have enough for the whole weekend. And so I don't have to run out all the time. So it's always make sure I have a nice enough supply of this alcohol or a drug. Spending money on the drug, even though you can't afford it. There's one of those, you get irresponsible with your money, your life responsibilities, and you overspend and get yourself into a problem, maybe because of the needing that drug. Not meeting obligations and work responsibilities. We talked about that a little bit, or cutting back on social or recreational activities because of drug use. Maybe you're going to do something with a family. You're going to go to a little get together with some other people or an event, whatever. And because you're using and you're more focused on that, you just isolate. You just decide, I'm not going to do that. And this takes precedent. Substance use takes precedent over the responsibility. Continuing, and this is big here, continuing to use the drug, even though it's causing problems in your life. That's the piece we talked about, or causing you physical or psychological harm. When someone's having physical problems from use, psychological problems as well, and they continue to use, that is a big sign of a major problem. Doing things to get the drug that you normally wouldn't do, such as stealing or other behaviors. Driving or doing other risky activities when you're under the influence of the drug. And, I would even throw that one in with the other one, doing things to get the drug you wouldn't normally do. And I've seen people, they're under the influence, they've got to go get more, and they drive saying, hey, I got to go, I'm going to go get it. And I mean, they're not really capable of driving. And, spending a good deal of time getting the drug, using the drug, or recovering from the effects of the drug. And, I always think of that, when people get up in the morning and they need to take a drink or use a drug to get back on balance, that's a big sign too. Even though they used last night, they get up and they want to use immediately. So failing in your attempts to stop using the drug is a big one. It's, again, we don't want to beat ourselves up, but that tells you that you are controlled by the drug because you can't stop using it. It's in control. I'm not in control. So experiencing withdrawal symptoms when you attempt to stop taking the drug. So I think that's a good list. And let's see here. Renee, I'm sorry.
I'm going to take over.
You got it. I'm turning it over to Renee. If you're tired of hearing from me, now you can listen to Renee. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alan. And so just a little bit to step back a second, because, when I came back into the mental health field from being in this, in school, I took a course actually through SpiritWorks called, Addiction 101 and then Recovery 101. If you have a chance to take those, fabulous classes. But I realized then that the education I had received in the early 90s about, substance abuse, even the terms had changed. And so you might hear us occasionally say substance abuse. We realized that any use of substances can be considered a problem. And so we want to use those words substance use because a lot of people use substances and don't think it's a problem. But then, you might not have a substance use disorder, but maybe you consume substances, drove a car, and was arrested for, DWI. So that's how you'll hear us use that term substance use. And we want to focus more on any use of the substances, not just for people that we used to call addicted, right? They are now considered a substance use disorder. And so, Alan talked about what an individual might see in themselves or experience themselves. I'm going to talk about what you might see if you were a coworker, a family, or a friend. And so a lot of times we look for changes in patterns. So you might be with an individual who has been, steady, hasn't changed a lot, but all of a sudden you're noticing changes. And those could be changes in what they're doing at work. Maybe they were very responsible at work and used to get a lot of things done, and now they aren't. Maybe they used to be always well-dressed and now they aren't as well-dressed. Sometimes they come in, especially in the morning, looking like they slept in their clothes. There might be excessive talk about, let's just say alcohol, about drinking or about needing a cigarette. Thinking about the words they're using, I need a drink. Do they really need the drink or would they like a drink? And so it's also important for us, and we'll talk a little bit about that, on how we model our behavior with substances. Even, legal substances, we need to be cognizant of how we're modeling our behavior for those around us. We need to look for changes in pattern of like friends. And it isn't always a bad thing. I remember years ago, I had a parent call me all concerned because her daughter had stopped hanging out with any of her friends. And the mother was convinced that something bad was happening. And so, of course, being the school counselor, I invited the girl into my office and she said, if I tell you something, do you have to tell my mother? And I said, well, it depends. If it's a threat to self or others, of course, I'm going to have to tell somebody. But she said, self or others, like if, it'd be a threat to myself. And I said, yes. She said, oh, I can tell you then. She said, I stopped hanging out with my friends because they're all using all the time and I don't want to do that. And I can't tell my mom because she's friends with all their parents and I don't want to rat them out. So here this girl was actually taking care of herself, but her mother wasn't, aware of that's what she was doing. And so we worked out a way for her to tell her mother without throwing her friends under the bus. So we're looking for those changes of behavior. We're also looking for money issues. Is this a person that always seemed to be responsible with their money or always flush with cash and then they aren't? If they're a family member, is money disappearing from your house? You thought you had 3 20s in your wallet, but there are only 2. And you're racking your brain to try to figure out where it went. If that happens once, I would chalk it up to, oh, I probably forgot I did it, something with it. But when it happens twice, start looking around. The other thing to do is pay attention to medication. If we're talking about young people share that they get prescription medication out of their family members' medicine cabinets. So if you have addictive, painkiller medication in your medicine case, in right there, open for everyone, try locking them up or at least hiding them, because we don't know who is going to be in our homes. We don't know what their possibility for substance use disorder is. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but you will see changes and just sort of keeping track of them. And Christy later is going to talk about when we see these things, what to do. So we aren't going to just leave you here going, okay, now you know. And as Alan said, we aren't diagnosing. So it isn't like I want you to have like a little notepad next to your desk and you're writing, so-and-so, let's see, she was 3 minutes late this time. Oh, no. You'll notice when these things happen. Okay. Next, Alan, if you could go to the next slide. Perfect. And so we know this, there are harmful effects of substance use. A lot of times those immediate ones, and the reason why that says effects on heart rate and body temperature, it depends on the substance, whether that's an increase in heart rate or a decrease, and that body temperature regulation. I don't know if you all remember the story. I think it was 2 winters ago. A young man up in McLean had gone to a party and had had too much to drink, and the police raided the party and everyone went and ran out the back of the house. Well, he had had so much to drink that he actually fell asleep on his way home and died of hypothermia. So when we're talking about the harmful effects, you don't need to have a substance use disorder to have those harmful effects, right? Some people with some of the drugs will have psychotic episodes immediately, while others, it depends on how much they're having. And of course, we know about overdoses and deaths. The overdose rate has increased dramatically over the pandemic. And we know, when we watch the news about the opioid epidemic, when people are under the influence of these substances, it can cause, legal problems like driving under the influence. You can have unprotected sex and end up with either a, sexually transmitted disease or even, unintended pregnancy. Needle and syringe sharing can also lead to other medical diseases. And then, I talked to a lot of high schoolers. I was in the field for 21 years with high schoolers. And I always laughed when they would tell me that alcohol and pot weren't gateway drugs. They're like, they are not gateway drugs. And I'm like, I'm not saying that, I've used alcohol this many times and that makes me use pot. Or I've used pot this many times and this makes me use. No, what it does is it lowers your inhibitions. So maybe you're drunk and somebody says, hey, you've got to try this. And because your inhibitions are lowered, you're like, sure. And that leads to the next drug. Same thing that can happen with pot. And realizing that when you are hanging out with or surrounding yourselves with individuals that use substances, there is a greater likelihood that you might use something you don't intend to use. And so we just need to pay attention to that. We also know long-term effects of this affects all sorts of, physical systems. So high blood pressure, cancer, liver disease, you see a lot with alcohol use. I thought it was fascinating that chronic bronchitis is associated with nicotine and with marijuana. Those vaping, use of vape products. I think it's really interesting. I used to do a presentation for young people about vaping. And I finally realized the way to help young people with vaping is to show them how the people who created the vaping system are multiple millionaires. And that they've been duped because, the kids would say, oh, no, vaping, when they introduced it in Europe, it was to decrease smoking. It was like, well, yes, that's true. Because in Europe, the European Union told the company that they could only put this much nicotine, which was less than half of what you would have in a cigarette, in their vaping product. So yes, it did lead to decreased use of nicotine. But when that product came into the market, I'm talking about Juul specifically, it had in one of those little Juul pods, it's an entire, same nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. And let me just tell you, those teenagers I was working with were going through those Juul pods like they were candy. And I said, so here in the United States, the Juul has actually increased smoking and people have had to stop Juuling because it's too expensive and gone to regular cigarettes. And then of course, there's also now their pot products that can be put in those Juul devices. There's also a concern because now that marijuana is becoming legalized, just thinking about what that is going to do to our communities. Sorry. Didn't realize that was going to ring. And so looking, even though something is legal, it doesn't mean that it always is healthy. Looking at other things, we also, have fetal alcohol syndrome and the neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is the effects of other drugs. Okay, next. So we talked about the harmful effects that could have on one person, but then it also has a big societal impact. Okay, I've silenced it now. And so, sorry, my whole computer is going off now. We know about reduced productivity. Alan talked about that. With any of these substances, there's higher healthcare costs because it impacts all of our, health systems. We talked a little about unintended pregnancies. Infectious diseases. We know that when people are under the influence, they aren't always as cognizant about staying healthy and staying away from things that might infect them. DWIs, of course, are very costly, as are other legal issues. And then, Alan was talking about, and I talked a little bit about money issues. And are you doing things that you wouldn't normally do to get the drug? And so that drug-related crime, you have individuals that are, holding people up at gunpoint to get money. And if you had asked them, 6 months ago, a year ago, would you ever thought you were capable of this? And they will tell you no. But because they get into that thought process of, I have to have this drug, I have to have this drug, and that is the only thing guiding them, rational thought goes out the window. And they aren't thinking, oh, I could be arrested for driving under the influence. I could be, I could go bankrupt because I'm spending all this money on drugs. They aren't thinking that way. Interpersonal violence. People under the influence are much more likely to, be the perpetrator of domestic violence or child abuse when they are under the influence. Because again, they are not thinking rationally. Their fuses are shorter, or can be shorter. And then of course, all this substance use disorder, substance use can cause stress within families. If you can go on one more, Alan. All right. And so a lot of people are like, okay, but why do people develop these substance use disorders? Why do people have trouble with substances? One of the things I think is fascinating is they used to say that, substance or alcoholism skipped generations. And it really didn't skip a generation. What happened was a child with a parent that was a raging alcoholic would say, there is no way I am going to ever do this to my family. Never. I will never touch the substance. And they don't. But as they grow up and they have their own children, instead of being open and honest about, look, the reason I choose not to use is because my parent was a raging alcoholic and this is what happened when I was growing up. They just say, you can't use. It's bad. You can't use. Well, we do know that some children are slightly rebellious and want to set their own, their own journeys. Well, if the only message they've had is that it's bad, they are more likely to use. And then because they don't know that family history of substance use disorder, they end up becoming one of its victims without even, and that's happened in, my own extended family. You also have to look at parental or, whoever's in the home's attitudes toward alcohol or toward other substances. I always cringe when people say, oh, it's so cute that, my 3-year-old will get me a beer out of the fridge. That isn't something we need to be training our kids to do. I mean, think about that for a 3-year-old. Everyone cheers and they're like, wow, bringing people beers is a fabulous thing. I can make friends this way. I can have a great life this way. So we need to make sure that as adults, as being legal adults for alcohol, that we are the ones who are handling the alcohol. We are the ones modeling great behavior. Great behavior isn't getting sloshed and, not waking up until 1 the next day, right? We need to set the expectation for our children on how we want them to behave by how we are behaving. Some people are like, but yeah, sometimes you just got to tie one on. Well, if you believe that, then you don't need to tie one on with your children present. And you don't have to glorify tying one on when you're talking with your children, when your children can overhear. And we also need to think about the language we use. I talked about it a little already. We don't need a drink. We'd like to have a drink. And if in all actuality we need a drink, then we need to talk more about what that really means. Okay. Alan already talked about, the increased likelihood of physical or sexual abuse. One thing kids really need are boundaries. They need to know that you are paying attention. And we do know that parents who are paying attention, their children are less likely to have problems with substance use. That means that you are asking, well, where are you going tonight? Well, who is going to be there? Well, let me call their mom. And I know that kids are like, God, don't call their parent because everyone will make fun of me. Well, guess what? I'm going to be one of those parents who just does. We know that other reasons for like substance use is sometimes people have coexisting mental health concerns. So they might be self-medicating. So if you are maybe feeling anxious, using a substance you think is going to help you feel better about that. Understand that it can then mean that you also need to come talk to somebody, not only about your mental health issue, but also about this co-occurring alcohol use or substance use. Because if they just stay hand in hand, that substance use is not going to cure the mental health issue. And there is a question of, sort of the chicken and the egg. Did you have a mental health issue first and then, we're trying to self-medicate for substance use, or did you start with a substance use which then caused the mental health issue? And so by talking to a professional, they can help you with that. Looking at people who you're hanging out with, whether that's for adults, are you with a group that substances is the primary thing? If so, I'd encourage you to find another group, but also looking at children and youth and seeing, who they're hanging with. Trust your gut in that. Other things, and it says lack of schoolwork and lack of school or work connectedness. Again, being connected is what we all want to do. Substance use blurs those connections. So people said, oh yeah, I'm bonding with my friends by all drinking or, using pot. Yeah, we're bonding. In actuality, it really isn't a great way of connecting. And so trying to find other connections will help reduce that substance risk. And then looking at low academic or work achievement, need to pay attention to that, because if it has always been that way, it might be that somebody is using substances because they feel bad about that. But if that's a change in pattern, we need to pay attention, because it really would be more of a substance use disorder forming than just use. And then of course, trauma, a lot of people, or a number of people who use substances are trying to mask a trauma. But I've talked a lot about the negative risk factors. Christy is going to talk about the protective factors. And so Alan, if you could go to the next slide.
Sure. And before I do, I just want to slide in one point here that I always find interesting. And it's good information for parents. It's good information if you're ever talking to young people. The younger someone starts to use a substance, the greater the chance they're going to have a lifelong issue with that substance. So it's, we want to definitely delay initiation of use.
Mhm.
It's always one of those factors that's important to talk about. And for some reason, when I do talks with young people, you don't want to get in there preaching. I always tell them I'm not a preacher, but I like to give information. And one is, as you think about experimenting, the earlier you use a substance, the greater the chance you're going to have a lifelong problem with it. And, I think that catches their attention. And I think it helps parents to think about when they're thinking, hey, take a sip of this, or they're looking at their monitoring. It's a battleground is all I can tell you. And anyway, I'll stop talking. Appreciate being able to add that.
Well, Alan, yeah, I think I remember being just amazed when the Surgeon General shared that if a young person starts using at the age of 13, they are 70% more likely to have a substance use disorder than if they wait.
Yes. And they're at increased risk of using other drugs for the same reason you mentioned that too. If they start with alcohol or this or that, they're around people that use. So it only increases the chance that they're going to be around other drugs. So certainly younger. So we're on that protective factors slide. Was the next one?
Okay. So I'm Christy again, and I'm going to talk about some protective factors to prevent substance use disorder. And we're going to cover high self-esteem, faith and spirituality, grit and resilience. That's really important to me. Is not how many times, what you do, how you get knocked down. It's how you get back up. That's what matters. And yeah. Peer factors, parental self-control and emotional regulation, parental and family co-worker monitoring, academic and work competence, anti-drug use policies, and strong neighbor community attachment. And that to me is one of the most important things as well. High self-esteem, that comes with putting yourself out there. As a peer, what I did and always do every day is find positive people to be around. During the pandemic, so many websites and Facebook pages came up with empowering yourself, giving positive feedback. We respond as people respond to positive reinforcement as opposed to negative, and which changing the terms to substance use disorder from substance abuse disorder, it just makes it lessens the stigma. I am not anonymous, and in every aspect of my life, people know. It depends on who they are. Different parts of my journey, and people come up to me all the time in confidence, and to ask me questions, and I give it freely. and confidentially. That's very important to get out there to help others, to make themselves feel that we are worth it. We are wonderful people. We're beautiful people, and we have something to give to our community. Faith and spirituality is necessary that you believe in something higher than yourself. Get involved in community um, faith-based projects. There's a wonderful clothing drive every year at Hope Church that I volunteer with, and it's good to give back, and it gives you purpose as well. We need purpose, grit, and resilience. It just having resilience and grit is using your past to gain your strengths, and everything is a learning experience, and we grow from that. And we have our cheerleaders, our children, our sisters, our brothers, our family members, our close friends. They are cheering for us as well as ourselves. And that helps propel our resilience, along with self-help groups, AA, there's Celebrate Recovery. There are a number of things, NA. There's so many things out there at our hands, our fingertips, and Zoom and hybrid meetings. Um, factors, that's huge. We've walked the walk. There's no judgment. We've probably done everything the same. And so that's huge. And it's very important that we can tell people things about ourselves that we know that they know what we're talking about and what we've walked through. And they can actually help us navigate through the steps we need to take, and help us with goals. Goals are important. Baby steps. It's not how fast you go, it's how you go. Yes. Just keep rising, just keep going. Academic and work competence. Like for me, I'm always taking training classes. I find them mainly on the Mental Health Association volunteer site, and they're all free and they're all wonderful. And I get CEUs for it for my certificate to keep it renewed. But I would do it anyway because there's it's ever evolving. As you said, Alan, there are more drugs coming out every day, new names, the higher, powerful, potent, and I need to be aware of what they are. I need to be up to date on whatever is out there so I know how to battle that and how to, what we need. Like I carry Narcan with me. You never know who you're gonna run around, just who needs it. Strong neighbor community attachment. Um, for me, when I started feeling a little squirrely, but I asked my sponsor, I think I need to get out and volunteer. I need to do something. And she said, oh, there's this a recovery center. And so I showed up. I said, I'd like to volunteer. My name is Christy, and I'll start with cleaning toilets or whatever. And they said, great. One moment. So I showed up the next day, the next day after that, the next day after that. And here I am 4 years later, certified peer recovery specialist. It's going into the jail, working with the women, and sharing my story, experience, strength, and hope. When they got out, and all the women who have ever been through the program, I have a chat room with them, giving them resources. I post inspiration every day. When the pandemic hit, I help them apply for Medicaid or give them the link for that if they can do it on their own. Unemployment, food, where they can get free food or clothing and utility help. It's important stuff. This is the necessities of life, and sharing all the resources. It's important that we do that for each other. Um, Give each other hand ups, not hand outs, because we also need to feel that we can do things on our own. We need a sense of responsibility as well, and it gives us more resilience. Anti-drug use policies. keeping up to date on the policies as the marijuana policies are coming out in more states, or it's more vital now to monitor your surroundings and how it's affecting people around you. Since I've been through everything, I can spot it. And my waitressing job, there you can, that kind of work. Most people are on something or do something, and I'm an open book there and have helped many people confidentially with telling them my story. They've come up to me and asked me, "Hey, Christy, you battle with this, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, come over here. I'll tell you all about it." And one of my young kids, he's 9 months sober now from opioids, and yeah, and it's just a wonderful thing. And now he's gonna pass it on somehow, some way. It just trickles down. Everybody pays it forward in their own way, and it's just so important. I think I've covered. Oh, and finding a passion, a hobby, something that really motivates you and excites you, something that you feel, something that you love. You get into that and you find what aspect you can do to help others. Me, I love music. I love live music. I'm in Colorado right now. It's 420. We all know what that means besides Earth Day. And I'm going to a concert and I'm representing Sober Sisters. I created an event within the event on the Facebook page where I'm at, and letting them know we're having a meet up before the concert, letting them know that during the concert I'll be at certain places at certain times, or they can reach me during the group on the phone if they feel triggered, if they feel unsafe, if they just want to hang out and just enjoy the music with somebody else sober. That's what I'm there for. And I found my passion and I'm helping others. We can have fun. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And I think that's about strong. Yeah. Next slide. How to help someone with a substance use disorder. So educate yourself about substance use, which brings to mind that Spirit Works actually is going through this ITC program. They have an invitation to change, and I believe it's online, and it's like a webinar. It's a class to take for loved ones, friends. Invitation to Change shows what the mind is of us in recovery or battling with substance use disorder. That it's not our choice. It helps loved ones know why we're choosing or not choosing, why we make the decisions we do, actually, and how to maybe change the terminology of asking questions. And that is a really important thing to do to open up conversation. So Invitation to Change through Spirit Works. It's really good, informative webinar. Sorry about that. Acknowledge that your friend might not see their drug use as a problem. Talk to your friends about your concerns. Be positive and let your friend know that that you are there for them. Avoid using emotional appeals. Find out about treatment resources that are available. Continue to offer emotional support. And don't forget about yourself. Self-care is important. So when I would go into the county jail with the Spirit Works program to help the women, when they came out and then through the lockdown, I'm always there. I'm walking with them, not for them, not ahead of them. I walk with them. They need to be able to do things on their own and have that sense of I can do this, because our self-esteem is this low, and we need to be able to have like the baby steps of progress, things that we can like cheer ourselves on, like I can do this, I can do this. It's important. steps at a time. Let's see. Right, finding about treatment resources. There are so many resources and nonprofits in our area that I use that I think that there's a network that I supply my friends with. They're not clients. They're people in search of a better way of life. Let's put it that way. And so if I can't help somebody, if I don't have the resources, I will refer them and do like a warm handoff to, let's say, Dana Barsky at Sex, Drugs, and God, or there's of course Bridget and Renee over at the Mental Health America, and there's Maura. She's got a wealth of information over at Kaya, and just so many other people around. There's Living the Dream Foundation, and let's see, oh, my lady friends over there at oh, of course I can't remember right now. I have it written down, but I can't. Dee Fleming and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Opioid awareness.
Yeah, I love those ladies. I always have my table next to them. Yeah, but just if I can help them or whatnot, we pick each other's brains and just as a community, what is best for the person. That is the most important thing. I don't need any accolades. It's what it's about is the healing person.
Hey, Christy, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to add one resource too while we're on it, just to feed in with you. There's the C Recovery Center now that RRCS has in Culpeper, and they have a peer support for recovery. They have meetings as a place that individuals can go, and I'm involved with other people doing training sessions there that help build self-esteem, resiliency, and those kinds of things. So it's a good program. Corey Will oversees that. So
yes, and Corey is another peer recovery specialist.
yes, yes, he's
Exactly.
the manager of that C Recovery Center too. So it's a good program.
Definitely, it's great things. And Felissa, are you involved in that as well?
Yes, I'm a peer recovery specialist at the C Center.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
About 20 of us, and we are out in the community as well as working at the center itself. I'm working the front desk right now. I'm sorry to have been late and loud, but we are doing good things here, great things, helping people to make better lives, give themselves better lives. I just got a bed for somebody in Culpeper, in Prince William for detox, and then they'll be going to the center in Richmond for further recovery. So these are the types of things that we do, and we bring them to the center to also help them meet their particular goals as they move along in their lives. So it's a very good place. It's gratifying, it's satisfying, it's a great place to be. I highly welcome you to come, take a tour of the place, and see what we have to offer.
Felissa, I think it's a fabulous place. I've taken the tour. I think the one thing that still blows my mind is all the services are free. They're at no cost for the people. And the only thing you need to do when you go in is just put what county you're from and whether or not this is your first visit. And so there's so many different resources there. It's amazing. I'll put you all's address and phone number in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Felissa, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see you, your sister. And I will come out to see you. We'll figure it out next week.
Okay.
Because I'm in Colorado right now. But that sounds wonderful. I love your smile, girl. So yeah, and there's so many more things out there that's popping up, and the stigma is just dropping. Just we don't need any more stigma out there. It's more common than we think, and I just want to. I am not anonymous. That's important to me, not to be anonymous. Very important. And I need to be. I'm approachable, and so I just there's so many people struggling that won't speak up, and that is why I am a voice for them. I will do what it takes. I will drive at 2 a.m. if they call me, because that might be the only chance they get. That the only time that they reach out is that one time, and I'm not gonna let them down. Okay, back on track.
All right. Well, I like that one piece down there. Don't forget about yourself either. I love you going out and going at it with all that passion. Keep taking care of yourself too, because you're vital. You're vital.
Yeah,
No
self-care
doubt.
is very important.
Yes.
There's so many self-care links. I have resources at Spirit Works Foundation Center for the Soul right there in Fauquier. And that is where I work. My passion is that is my passion job. The
Beautiful.
of the Wild Wings is my money job so that I can do my passion job.
Right.
Yes. And it's just but both I help people in all aspects of my life, especially in the restaurant industry. It's a lot of struggling people there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my bar stool ministry. For
I like it.
real. Yeah. So we continue to offer emotional support. And I've found that the support and the positive, not the negative. We've all heard negative, in ways too much in our lives, and that would make me rebel even more. But positive, and walking beside somebody, that's what people need. Is just feeling a sense of belonging is very important. We all feel like outcasts. Or speaking of a peer, we need to feel like we belong, and that yes, we are important as a community. We do fit in, and that sense of belonging there is a big factor. There are many websites and apps and things that can assist in that and make it fun and slowly get out there. But I think getting involved in the community and volunteering, that it gives you a sense of self-esteem, and you work that way up little by little by little. And I think I'm getting off topic here.
Now, I'll tell you, Christy, what I love that you're doing in others by working it this way with that recovery mindset. Hey, treatment's one thing, and believe me, and I used to do parole work for years back in the 80s up to the year 2003. And I did find that I had a counseling background, and I always said I brought counseling to corrections because they would say, don't do this or I'll lock you up. Don't do that. Hey, why do you do it? Let's get you some help. And then it's the follow-up after the treatment that makes a difference. And that's why I love that NAAA, any of these, and then to put that focus on recovery, because treatment is treatment. Recovery is where the action happens. That's where the life changes and you get that support, all the things you're listing here. So that's vital, vital. But you know that I'm not preaching to you, but you know that. And so you got to walk with them, and you got to expect sometimes, like you said, hey, there can be some relapses. We hope it doesn't happen, but there can be. Instead of beating people up, okay, let's be resilient. What steps we're going to take, let's bounce back or try to catch it early. What's going on? I want to support you. Let's talk. There's other options than use, so I love what you're doing. I love it. It's the difference making. And love the program, love all of it. It's what we needed. It's what we needed all along.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. There's Celebrate Recovery. There's AA, and I do it all actually. Because I need all the aspects. I need to keep it well-rounded for myself. And yeah, I attend all those. I get something out of everything. It makes it one whole me.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And there's no wrong way to do it as long as you're feeling better and healing.
I was trying to see how to.
And the people around you start to heal as well.
Sound, I can't.
Beautiful.
How to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I think that's about it. Everything else was, if you find about treatment resources and things, well, with Melissa and the Culpepper and myself and Warrington, I think we've got our areas covered. And we're
Beautiful.
working together. Yeah, I believe so much in everybody working together. A warm handoff. If I can't, somebody, I'm gonna introduce them and be there and say, hey, this is my friend Felissa. I don't have the resources, but Felissa does. This is so and so. Okay, bye. That's how we do work as a community.
One
And
team,
so-
one fight. I love it.
Mhm,
And
absolutely.
so Christy and Felisa, if I was a person that was concerned about a friend of mine
Mhm.
and I started this conversation with them, what would be our next steps? Like, do we just show up at Spirit Works? How would you recommend we take the next step?
Yeah.
For
Well-
the City Center, they would just stop in. It is for the community. So they could come right into the Sea Center. We would give them a tour. Then we have a meditation room. We have different courses that they could attend. Like right now, there's an anger management course. But if they're in crisis, we also have a crisis center. But if someone is looking to say just get into detox, we would lead them through those steps. We would take them, sit down, do an assessment of exactly what they're trying to do, and sit with them and find out exactly what their goals are and help guide them through that process. So that is the main thing that we do as peer recovery specialists. There's also different levels where we can go. We have a counselor on staff, and we have, of course, Corey, who takes care of everything here. If things escalate to different levels, but I've been here about 3 months or so I can't speak to everything. Although I know I've made a difference already in many people's lives just by them walking through the door and saying, "Help me," and we're able to provide that help instead of. One of the things that's most important is instead of being dropped off at the police station, they can come here instead, and we can provide a shower, we can provide some minimal clothing, we can provide an occasional meal, not all the time, but we're working on that, and we can provide guidance, and that's the most important thing, that there's a place to come where people who are feeling in need of dealing with their drug and alcohol issues. It's a place to come now instead of the police station. So
Mhm.
I find that to be a valuable resource. We're here for the community. We serve 5 counties, and we're looking to grow and expand into Fauquier County eventually. And I believe that you just broke ground in Madison. So, but I'm not the person to speak on all of that. But I can just tell you from the ant level, it's an exciting place to be.
That's awesome, Felissa. And the Me Too factor is the most important, I think, for the people coming in and asking for help, because there's a window there. Yeah, and you know all about that, right, Felissa? I mean, and so with the Me Too, it's more inviting, it's warm for them because it's like, okay.
There was one lady who came in and she wanted to speak with someone about going to detox, but she was with a friend. This is just anecdotally. She was with a friend who brought her, and she wasn't quite certain if she wanted to go to detox. Well, I've had an issue with alcohol. So we sat and talked for an hour, and we just were able to connect in a way that she was concerned that she would go somewhere and someone would, a counselor or someone from on high would speak down to her and say, "This is how you should get your life in order." But instead, I was able to speak with her one-on-one. I've been through what you're going through. I know for whatever, at whatever level, I understand and know what you're going through. And she later said, that because she was able to speak with somebody who understood, that gave her the courage to keep moving forward. She wrote back to me and said, if I hadn't talked to you, I wouldn't have gone to detox. I just wouldn't have done it. And so that making those connections, that's really important. And that helps people on a level, the peer model helps people on levels that it's new, it's a new thing, but it's an important thing.
I agree. It's a vital piece of recovery for the substance use disorder, and mental health and substance use are hand in hand. And yeah,
We deal with mental health issues as well, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and mental health challenges here at the C Center. So I've forgotten to look that piece out, but thank you for your patience with me. I'm learning.
we all are, always, every day. Every day we do this together. We
Yes.
are one.
Hey, I'm going to put a plug in for while we're talking. I got to say this. I'm going to see. I've done resiliency presentations and other life skills trainings there, but I'm going to be doing the gatekeeper training and it's we say it's a suicide prevention program, but when you do gatekeeper training, you're recognizing stress, distress, signs and symptoms. You check out signs, but not everybody's thinking of suicide. So it's really a program that you identify people who are having problems. And it may be that they may be thinking about suicide. They may not be. So it's a prevention and an intervention training. I'm going to train all the C staff and all the staff at RRCS under the Zero Suicide program that we're doing. They'll all be gatekeeper trained, including the C staff. So, that gatekeeper concept and it's for community members too. I'm encouraging, a reason I brought it up, any agency, any school, any community partner, any church group, anybody who wants that gatekeeper training, get me. I do it. And it helps us work together, one team, one fight, to recognize someone who's having problems. And then, hey, we're not diagnosing, we're linking and referring. People can get them into these wonderful programs that we're starting to evolve everywhere in our community. So if you need me for that, I'm putting that on the table. Get me. I'll do the training. It takes about 1 hour. And, you can be trained to recognize, intervene, and prevent and link. That's all it is linking. It's a shorter thing about some of the same thing with mental health first aid. Is a short presentation about signs, symptoms, and then how to link somebody to help, how to ask the question too, are you having thoughts of suicide? So anyway, I'm just putting that on the table.
I'm sorry, I have to say this. On the plane out here, I saw one of the newest Ghostbusters. So you were calling it the gatekeeper. Does that make you the keymaster?
Hey, some people say I'm leading that piece of the operation as now prevention manager, but it's one team, one fight. I'm not into, I've been doing it since 2003. So I can tell you I've trained over 50,000 adults and youth to recognize signs and intervene. I've got story on story where people do it. So, it's a community issue. We need all the community we can get involved. That's what I do. It's all there is. And you hit it. There's certain correct people in corrections. They have anybody that's involved in the correctional system, they're at risk for mental health issues, substance use issues. We need to be alert for everybody and anybody, but everybody needs to be trained. Everybody needs to be a gatekeeper.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Alan, you can go to the next slide. And does anyone have any questions? You can either put them in the chat or just unmute.
Hey, I put a regional call center number in the chat box that, now with the gatekeeper training, our agency promotes this. It's where do you link? And so we don't diagnose, we don't know all the services. We just want to find out what's going on and then hand off the person. So this regional call center number for our area, you can talk to someone who will be able to link. They'll listen. understand what's going on, or if you yourself are having problems, you can call it, I need help. But the gatekeeper can do it as well. It's the go-to number. It used to be the, the 825-5656 that the